Start in a few seconds. So welcome everyone, welcome to the Zero Corruption Forum 2025 edition. I just want to remind you that you can speak either English or Italian. There is a interpretation service available in the room, so there are headphones available outside. Ci sono cuffie per la traduzione inglese e italiano all'esterno della...
Headsets are available in order to get the simultaneous interpretation service.
To be very strict when it comes to the timing of your intervention, because our timetable is very, very, very strict. So please, let's try to be as disciplined as possible. So without further ado, I will call on the floor to start today's agenda, Ms. Annie Rosenbaum, who is the Executive Director of Business at OECD, and of course a very good friend of us and of mine in particular. Please, Anne.
Good morning to all. It's fantastic to see such a full room, and it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to our 2025 Zero part of the solution. Let me also say a few words. And as far as companies are concerned, we need to bring small and medium-sized enterprises on board through capacity building, awareness raising, and sharing of good practices, also between large companies and small companies. And third, we need to leverage the use of new technology, digital and AI, which hold huge potential to enhance transparency, accountability, and efficiency, both in the public and private sector. Let me also underline that we need a truly comprehensive approach in the fight against corruption. We need to address the supply side, and we need to address the demand side. We need to connect the dots with different policy areas, from investment, education, and digital, to just name a few. And we need to foster partnership between the public and private sectors. Now, today's meeting is an important step to foster dialogue and bring additional momentum into our global efforts to foster integrity. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers today, and I encourage you all to participate actively in the discussion at the meeting and also after the meeting. And before closing, I would like to address our sincere gratitude to Nicola Allocca, who chairs our Business at OECD Integrity and Anti-Corruption Committee, for all his support, strategic guidance, and vision. And Nicola, your vision is really what makes it happen. Thank you very much for this. Also pleased to let you know that Nicola got appointed as co-chair of the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force, which gives us another opportunity to spread the message beyond the OECD. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to an exciting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenbaum, and Minister Tajani and Vice President Tajani wanted to be here, but unfortunately has been kept to Palazzo Chigi because of the unforeseen council ministers. So General Alessio Nardi, who is advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs for security policies and matters related to justice, cooperation, and development, will take the floor and will convey the message that Minister Tajani has decided to give to this audience. Thank you.
Buongiorno a tutti. The great honor and pleasure to convey to all of you the message of Minister Antonio Tajani, who is at the moment busy with another important engagement as the Council Minister. The message is written in Italian, so if you allow me to switch in my mother tongue, I will read his message.
I would like to express my greetings to all the participants, and I wish to thank the organizers of this event on the crucial prevention and countering of corruption. A crime which is transnational, and especially when it aims at promoting drug trafficking or money laundering for terrorist activities. The struggle against corruption is a top priority for our government and for myself. An action we carried out with a great deal of determination, and that in these years allowed us to achieve significant results by strengthening the image of Italy as a leading country in the fight against organized crime and corruption. A country that is the second manufacturing country in Europe which protects investments. Our commitment turns legal diplomacy into a means to strengthen competitiveness in a country. And to underline the central role of this action, I decided to host last 9th of December, together with the Ministries of the Interior, Piantedosi, and Justice, Nordio, and with the representatives of Carabinieri, Police, and Guardia di Finanza, a meeting to celebrate the Anti-Corruption Day. So this commitment falls within the broader strategy of diplomacy for growth, which I started to support our companies and also promote internationalization of our territories.
In un'economia globalizzata e con movimenti transfrontalieri di persone e capitali, la
So diplomacy becomes a tool to bridge the gap between jurisdictions and promote common strategies. By contributing to the strengthening of the legal systems, we intend to ensure companies to have a better certainty of the rule of law also abroad and equal conditions in accessing international markets. For this reason, I decided to launch projects in the sector of justice and security with strategic countries by involving two Italian levels of excellence, that is to say Carabinieri and Guardia di Finanza, thanks to their experience and from the strategic and operational point of view. And I'm thinking about the Falcone and Borsellino programs to counter organized crime in Latin America. Their contribution is acknowledged and appreciated, as it was confirmed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Argentina and the new Minister from Uruguay that I met last few days. And I'm also thinking about anti-corruption programs that we are implementing in Southeast Asia, which is a strategic area in our foreign policy, and that we intended to devote to Rosario Livatino. I'm pleased to announce that Italy, with the Serbian presidency of INCE, is going to launch a Falcone and Borsellino program with the member countries of that organization. They were also working to extend this activity in Africa as well, and this is a priority for our government. In the fight against corruption, setting the example is crucial. That is why I implemented a number of provisions so that our embassies and consulates counter any possible form of irregular activity, especially in activities as visas and the granting of the Italian citizenship. As from the beginning of my mandate, I've sent 140 inspections in Africa and Latin America, a careful monitoring that sees diplomats and the staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work hand in hand with the Carabinieri and the Tax Police Corps, which I thank for their contribution. And this activity is becoming fruitful. Our teamwork, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Interior and Justice, allows us to be more and more protagonists on the international stage. So please rely on me and on the Italian government, and a fruitful day. Thank you. Antonio Tajani.
Grazie Generale, l'autorità.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The Italian Anti-Corruption Authority plays a central role in countering corruption in Italy, a role which is increasingly characterized by an international activity that has become relevant. And among the authors of this further evolution, there's, of course, the current President. I'd like to invite on stage, please.
It's good morning, everybody. It's a big pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the ASPI, OECD, and the Minister of Exterior, not only to invite me in this occasion, in this important occasion, but more than that, for organizing this meeting in a time that we know is difficult for us who really want to work in anti-corruption, because often nowadays we see that anti-corruption rules are seen as a break rather than help to progress, to development, and to open to economic and social growth. And we know that we have not, there is no possibility to not mention that the temporary suspension of the application of the Foreign Corruption Practices Act in the United States is an element that asks to us to a deep reflection. And this is the reason that for that event like today's are important. So important because give us the opportunity to reaffirm the strength of our commitment in front of present and future threats. And today, more than ever, Zero Corruption Manifesto that was developed in OECD appears as a fundamental and a urgent instrument. It requires us to work together to achieve zero tolerance for all forms of corruption in all areas. And Europe, in this moment, has a big role to develop, because Europe has the possibility to play a role in this moment, to have to strengthen its commitment for its democratic values and the authority of legal system. We have to contribute to the effort the OECD is will do in this framework, and also to put this position, and we know that the Parliament, the Council, and the Commission are discussing the directive, anti-corruption directive, that will be an important instrument for all our countries, and I'm sure also for OECD. And our authority, thanks to Minister Angela to recall this element, is doing a lot of efforts at international level, both in fora like OECD, Council of Europe, UN, G20, and I thank, of course, the Minister of Exterior. There is a very good cooperation on that. And we, in this moment, have the honor, and I have the honor, to preside the European Network of Public Ethics at European level, and also a global organization like the Network of Integrity. Because integrity, we have to reaffirm today, and I think the meeting of today is this, has to do that, is one of the pillars on which political, economic, and social structure are built, and thus is an essential element of economic and social well-being. A poor culture of integrity means lower profit for business, lower aspiration for professional, and, more seriously, lower expectation of health, education, and therefore life for citizens. At economic level, corruption causes incalculable damages, and it drives away foreign investment, dissipates public money, reduces competition, slows down innovation and research, increases bureaucracies, paralyzes growth, and have a lot of effects on security. But this is more. There are consequences that goes also beyond the economy. Corruption increases inequality, denies social justice, drives the country's best talent to seek success elsewhere. And we in Italy know this phenomenon. undermine the credibility of institutions, increases crime, and causes damages, incalculated damages to our democracy. What we have to do, has been recalled, we have, first of all, and our authority work on that, work on prevention. Prevention is a key element because we know that enforcement is not enough, and we have to work on all the rules and good practices that can help to prevent corruption. We have to improve transparency, and to improve transparency is possible and is easier today because we have digitalization that is an instrument to help us to be more efficient, to be more rapid in our activities, and on the other hand, to be more transparent, to help competitive, to price the good practices. And what we have to do is we have to do in many kinds of element and activity to help us in this element. Of course, there are many effects on efficiencies that we can use. Technologies and artificial intelligence, everything are big challenges for us. Of course, there are also threats in using that, but we have to use this instrument also to have more prevention of corruption and an instrument that can help our activity. And third element, we have to join and to combine proactively the effort of public and private institutions. And this is one of the key elements of today's reflection. In all sectors, we have to, and this also, of course, the logic beyond the zero corruption manifesto that recommends to promote in public and private sector a common culture of integrity in all society, civil society, business, and public institutions have to work together. And I want to the time is not enough, but I want only to underline how important is looking on the competencies of our authority to work in private and public partnership in the public investment. Now in Italy, we are moving for a moment in which we had a lot of investment, and now we will have a moment in which the public fund will be less. But public and private, and so, of course, public and private partnership will be an important instrument. But this is not enough. It's not only to have public and private resources to be used for public objectives. Is more than that, a way to work together, to put together the effort, to work and to learn from each other. That is the real important element. And I want to recall, but only to recall, the importance to have common rules as the one that we are applying also in Italy, thanks to a directive, the whistleblowing directives, and our authorities are responsible for that. I know that is difficult, especially in business and for company, to apply whistleblowing rules, but we have to demonstrate concretely how important is this instrument to help the company to be free of corruption and to avoid the damages of corruption. I have not a lot of time, I was too long. I want to say that third, the fourth, the most important element is cooperation. Cooperation of all institutions, cooperation among public institutions, and we work with cooperation of all institutions, cooperation between public and private, and international cooperation that is fundamental to achieve our objectives. So integrity is a mission not for few people, not for one or more or so important companies like ASPI. I know the effort that ASPI is doing, leadership that is doing, and I thank for that, but it's a work to do together. I think that events like today are important occasion to go ahead, especially in this difficult moment, to make possible that what is written in the Zero Corruption Manifesto is possible. We have to make it possible, and our efforts are here to demonstrate that really is a possible reality if we work on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Lucia. Now we have the last keynote speech of the day before we move to panels. Business at the OECD is the main promoter of this initiative. They play a key role in multilateral fight against corruption. I would invite to the floor Nicola Locca, who is the chair of Business at the OECD. Please, Nicola.
Thank you very much, and a personal thanks to President Busia for setting the tone from the top. On behalf of my CEO, Roberto Tomasi, I would like to extend his warmest greetings to the institutions and all the guests present here today. Unfortunately, due to unexpected commitments, he is unable to attend his event and apologizes. I am honored to speak for Autostrade, and I will do my best to share with you our vision on business integrity. First of all, I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Business at OECD for making this event possible, all the institutions and the distinguished speakers for their valuable presence. A special thanks to Annie Rosenbaum for her sponsorship, endorsement, and continuous support. I would like to thank the Minister Raffaele Rangella and Giovanni Tartaglia Polcini, whose work on the Interinstitutional Anti-Corruption Roundtable is a great example of effective multilateralism and collective action. Let me thank please also Autostrade's top management and management for their presence here today and for setting the tone. A big thank you to Autostrade communication team and a special mention to Nathan Myung from the Business at OECD and Valerio Fedele from my team. So as Autostrade 5 years ago, we started a transformation program driven by a challenging investment plan aimed at strengthening our infrastructure to become an integrated operator of sustainable mobility. And one of the key enablers of this transformation has been a strong commitment on responsible governance, risk, and control. Our governance transformation has been built on 3 fundamental pillars. First, tone from the top, as also Annie mentioned. Top management has taken full responsibility for implementing strong, smart, and lean controls. In Autostrade per l'Italia, control functions report directly to the CEO, ensuring a transparent oversight mechanism. The second pillar of our governance transformation is the alignment with international standards and best practices. We have embedded the OECD guidelines in our governance framework, ensuring that we align with the highest global standards and principles of integrity and compliance responsibility. And our participation to the Business at OECD as chair of the Anti-Corruption Committee and to the B20 South Africa as co-chair of the Integrity Compliance Task Force empowers it. The third element is the artificial intelligence for compliance enhancement. We have implemented artificial intelligence solutions not only to monitor our infrastructure, but also to oversee our internal processes. We created a department led by AI called RITA. RITA stands for Risk and Integrity Technical Assistant. It is not just a tool to increase our compliance capacity, but she is like a new colleague. And we have here today Rita, and if you don't mind, I will leave the floor to her for introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rita, the new digital colleague at Autostrade per l'Italia, tireless, incorruptible, and always data-driven. First of all, I would like to thank you, my company, and all of you, for giving me the floor, or should I say, the algorithm. Are you wondering my mission? It is strengthening internal control systems with AI, making integrity not just a principle, but a built-in feature of every decision. That's why I'm here at today's Zero Corruption Forum, to prove that technology isn't just a tool, but a game changer for transparency, trust, and responsible business conduct. I'm sorry I have to go now. Duty calls. And as you can see, my colleagues need me. Integrity never sleeps, and neither do I. Thank you, and enjoy the forum. Bye.
Thank you to Rita. And I would like also to thank the co-pilot, Stefano Natale Tolba, for taking care of her. So, with Rita, AI represents an opportunity to streamline anti-corruption rules and to reduce bad bureaucracy. In order to do this, we need values. AI must be used responsibly. This was a key topic in the last B20 Brazil. And I think that we must treat AI as a new colleague like Rita, ensuring that she operates according global standards and principles, including OECD guidelines. At Autostrade per l'Italia, we apply this approach, and our AI solutions are implemented according to 5 principles. They must be useful and put the people at the center. They must be transparent, security and safe, innovative and resilient, responsible and sustainable. AI requires also new competencies in terms of reskilling, upskilling, and change management. Furthermore, in this context, companies should focus on capacity building by demystifying and educating people on different types of technologies and their application. Last year, the business at OECD issued a paper on education and anti-corruption, underlying the importance of these aspects. AI needs also upfront investment to empower compliance functions. These departments must have adequate resources to implement AI data-driven solutions, because having a smart internal control system is now a strategic asset, as it multiplies company value. Last but not least, to have an effective AI strategy in compliance, we need courage. We need to take actions putting in discussion classical biases on organization, control frameworks, and budget allocation. In other terms, AI is a strong game changer in the fight against corruption, as it is transforming the governance in the private sector. It can be seen as a new stakeholder whose role is to maintain the essential balance between performance and compliance, results and rules, business and values. And let me conclude focusing on the importance of this event. It is the second year that Autostrade carries forward this collective initiative with the support of the business at OECD and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Bringing institutions, civil society, international organizations, and business on the same table represents a crucial moment of dialogue to address a global cross-cutting issue that we must face together to assure a sustainable future and progress on long-term challenges. This event is based, as President Busia said, on the Business at OECD manifesto that calls for the treatment of zero corruption as if it were an 18th SDG. The manifesto puts forward 10 key actions to build a more resilient, responsible, and competitive business ecosystem with zero corruption. And the zero corruption is one of our cornerstone principles of our industrial plan. But the zero corruption is a principle together with other two zeros. Zero workplace incidents and zero road accidents. This commitment reflects our vision of a company, like Autostrade per l'Italia, that must be safe, responsible, and ethical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. So we are ready to start the first of the two panels we'll have today. I will call to take their seats Mauro Battocchi, who is the General Director of DGSAP, the General Directorate of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is responsible for the promotion of Italy abroad. DGSP and MAXXI, together with Siemens, they developed a module which has been adopted by Siemens each and every time a company, an Italian business applies for preferential loans. This module has been conceived in order to raise awareness in the framework, in the field of the fight against corruption. So please, Mauro. Then I will call to the floor Antonio Matonti, my very dear friend from Confindustria. Confindustria, as you probably know, is the largest Italian business association with more than 250,000 associates and something like 250 different business associations. Confindustria has been very active since 2002 at least in fighting against corruption. Then I will call to the floor Vanessa Hans of the Basel Institute on Governance. Please. It's an institute to support particularly small and medium-sized enterprises with tailored guidance on anti-corruption practices. And finally, Daniela Bernacchi from the UN Global Compact Network Italy. She will tell us what the UN Global Compact is. I will just tell you that this is a non-binding United Nations pact. Well, give me just a moment to take the floor. And I will start. Yes, I will start asking to different participants a very short introduction and intervention about the activities they carry on in the fight against corruption in their respective entities and companies. Thank you. Mauro.
So thank you very much, Raffaele. I would like to thank warm-heartedly all the organizers of this very crucial event. It represents an important step in the activities that our Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Antonio Tajani is leading in fighting corruption at all levels that are within our responsibilities. As was mentioned by General Nardi in his introduction, now the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also in charge of promoting what we call diplomacy for growth, which means supporting business in their international expansion. And we see very encouraging results in this expansion. I mean, last year, 623 billion worth of goods were exported worldwide from Italy, from Italian companies, most of them medium and small companies. Now, I think it is very important to position Italy and to position also the activities that we carry out in this respect to reduce the risk of corruption, to tell that these companies consistently are leaders in international markets. Corruption is a shortcut. In a way, it's a way to find the shortest and unethical way to the result. But the fact that Italian companies are leaders is really telling us that we now have achieved, thanks to the activities of Confindustria, of what we call Sistema Italia, all the governmental agencies working with us. We have achieved important results because competition can only be won with a no corruption policy. Again, corruption means a shortcut, but Italian companies are competing and they win because they have products, they have quality, they have procedures. Now, you said to be short, I would like to say corruption basically can be fought at different levels. One is cultural. It is unethical, and that's why we have to spread awareness. We would like to start again what we used to organize in the past, which are the Italian Business Integrity Days all over the world. There has been lots of work done, and the idea is that the plan with my colleagues is to have this opportunity to spread the awareness and generate a better, let's say, a clearer perception of the damage of corruption. Another thing is enforcement. And in terms of enforcement, I have to say, Italy is really leading the way. We had here the representative, the chair of ANAC. ANAC, I think, is a model. I was an Italian ambassador in Latin America, and I can tell that Latin American countries are looking at Italy to see what we do to fight corruption, to fight organized crime. We have a very important set of instruments that we use, and we will keep on using in terms of enforcement. Another level is reputation. We discussed this with Raffaele also in the past. Companies, they perceive more and more the fact that if you lose your integrity, then you lose your reputation. And I think all the activities that the OECD carries out with our support, also the action that we carry out with SACE, with CIMEST, with ICE, with the governmental agencies I was mentioning, are really meant to make companies understand that it's really, if there was any vague temptation, it's really not worth, because the reputational damage can be really very strong. And last but not least, also it was very nice to hear the representative of Autostrade per l'Italia. Now technology helps. Digitalization is very important, helping, and also AI now can really help, and we are promoting the adoption of digitalization also against corruption with our incentive schemes that we as a ministry offer Italian companies to get international. So summing up, I think a lot has been done. Italian companies are competing safely. We as a government, together with the business community, are strongly committed. Of course, there can be more to be achieved, but we are very much committed to achieve it.
Thank you very much, Mauro. Yes, indeed. I mean, the fight against corruption is quite at the very center of juridical diplomacy, which is one of the most important and most recent directives, I mean, of foreign policy, not only for Italy, but also for other European states. I will give the floor to Antonio Matonti, Confindustria, if you can elaborate a little bit more about the activities that Confindustria is carrying on in the field of fight against corruption.
Thank you very much, Raffaele, and thank you, good morning at all, and thank you to Business at OECD, to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and to Autostrade per l'Italia for organizing this second edition of Zero Corruption Day, a highly significant event for the companies we represent. Confindustria has always believed that corruption is an important obstacle to doing business. I agree with Mr. Busia, it distorts the allocation of resources and disrupts free competition. We and our members have been committed to promoting behaviors that uphold the respect of the law. The problem of corruption is complex, with multiple consequences, including reputational damage, as Mauro said, affecting both businesses and the country, the entire country economic system. In this regard, in this my first intervention, I would like to point out the attention on one point. We are concerned about the divergence between the perceived and actual corruption levels. The Corruption Perception Index, published last month by Transparency International for 2024, ranks Italy at the position number 52 globally. So perception of systemic corruption, while important, risks providing only a partial picture of a country's real situation, and in particular for Italy. In fact, several factors such as mass media coverage, social media dynamics, and news with high emotional impact can significantly influence public perception. A different perspective emerges if we examine more experience-based indicators. For example, the Istat corruption in Italy reports 2022-2023. In this report, the percentage of families who reported being asked for money or favors has dropped from 2.7% to 1.3% compared to the previous survey. This data suggests or confirm that the policies implemented in recent years have had a positive impact. I agree also on this point with Mauro. In fact, Italy has made continuous efforts to strengthen its regulatory framework. The introduction of anti-corruption law in 2012, the transposition of the European Whistleblowing Directive, and the adoption of corporate compliance programs show growing attention to the issue from public and private sector. Nevertheless, to avoid falling in a sort of perception trap, it's necessary to implement specific measures that enhance transparency through objective data on corruption. To be truly effective in the fight against corruption, we need to consider the basis of our assessment. And from this perspective, it's crucial to rely on more specific indicators, such as the number of verdicts, to assess more precisely the trend of corruption and the effectiveness of law enforcement policies. It's not just collecting numbers, rather it's about understanding what these numbers reveal, the dynamics they expose, and the vulnerabilities also they highlight. Additionally, access to data on public tenders cancelled due to suspected irregularities would help us to identify the areas most subject to manipulation and assesses the efficiency of the supervisory system and responding quickly. All of this has a direct impact on business. In fact, accurately identifying corruption is also a key factor influencing foreign investment decision. According to the main international indicators, regulatory transparency and the absence of corruption remain among the most critical factors in determining investment attractiveness. So the public institution involved must adopt effective monitoring and prevention tools, ensuring clear rules, timely supervision, but also, I repeat, objective statistical reporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. On the issue of perceived corruption indexes, I mean, there is quite a long-standing literature and a very promising discussion with other actors who are involved in this matter, I mean, this field, starting, of course, from Transparency International and other actors. Vanessa Hans represented the Basel Institute on Governance. What's your experience when it comes to the hurdles that small and medium-sized enterprises normally have to face when it comes to anti-corruption?
Thank you. And thank you as well to the organizers for convening us for this important discussion today. So just maybe a word of background for the Basel Institute on Governance. We have been working in the space of anti-corruption for the last 20 years. And really realizing that corruption is a multifaceted problem. I think all of the speakers this morning have all alluded to the different forms and different challenges it brings. And so we at the Basel Institute look at supporting enforcement. So we work with different governments across the world, and the reason why that also relates somehow to small and medium enterprises is because when we talk to small and medium enterprises, one of the key elements that they convene is to say, well, lack of enforcement for them is a real challenge to level the playing field. And so it's important as well to continue that conversation because, of course, that goes to that element of competition, right? We shouldn't be in a situation where companies that engage in acts of corruption have a shortcut, a competitive advantage. And so for us, it was really important to look at it from both sides, both the enforcement side, but then also a lot of the work we do looks at prevention. And on the prevention side, there are several things that we do, which also include a lot of the work with civil society, because I think it's also important to engage them in the conversation. Looking at working also with governments, so looking at having conversations around strategies for business integrity in the context of national anti-corruption strategies, for instance, globally. But also looking at working directly with SMEs. And of course, when we engage with SMEs, the first thing they also tell us is, well, we don't have the resources, we don't have the knowledge. This is all very challenging for us, especially in the world we live in with different jurisdictions having different takes and having to navigate this jigsaw of different legislations. So one thing that we do is focus on collective action. I've heard it several times today, and this is really what the Basel Institute does. So anti-corruption collective action is this idea of working first and foremost with different stakeholders to solve together problems relating to corruption. And also fundamentally from an SME perspective, saying that one company alone cannot change the rule. But if several companies, whether in one specific sector or specific geography, come together, then we can change how business is done and can also find common solutions for problems. And I think one integral part to that is also public-private partnerships where solutions can be formed jointly, also with government stakeholders. So I think from that perspective, SMEs are unfortunately quite often overlooked when it comes to broader policy discussions, and that's why I think it's really great to also have partners at business at OECD that cover so many companies, because we often hear the multinationals taking part in those international fora, but it's important to also have different actors representing that. And then the last part is also working with partners that can be multipliers and enablers for others. So industry associations, business associations are definitely one of the important players there that can help disseminate the information, but also support different organizations. And so we do work with them, providing them also technical assistance through train-the-trainer programs, for instance, in anti-corruption, to be able to empower them to then work with their own members. So I think there are plenty of things that can be done, and really welcoming this discussion today with other partners. And of course, we also work with different chapters of UN Global Compact around the world talking about associations, because the work that they do is also really important. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. If you are concise enough, we can maybe dare a second round of questions. Daniela Bernacchi, she is the representative of the UN Global Compact Network Italy. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Global Compact?
Yes, the Global Compact, as you said, it's a voluntary initiative. So companies join our initiative because they do want to make the difference, and Autostrade is one of it. We globally have 24,000 companies all around the world committing to sustainable development and our principles in the 4 areas: human rights, work, environment, and anti-corruption. So our 10th principle is against corruption in all its forms, including bribery and extortions, and our company is committed towards the fight against corruption. It's interesting to say that according to our latest data, there is $1 trillion paid in bribes annually, $2.6 trillion paid, stolen in corruption, and the financial gap to reach the Agenda 2030, so the Sustainable Development Goals, is annually 2.5. So we are losing opportunities to have a sustainable economic development and a more just society for everyone. And this is why we work every day with companies, but also with governments as well as civil society, because we do believe that together we can properly address the issues. What do? We work at multilateralism efforts. So as I said, with governments. Last year, we had 2 years ago, we together with UN ODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, organized a private sector forum at COP10, where the final resolution was to give more incentive to the private sector in order to fight corruption. We also belong to the government group as country in Italy with our foreign ministry, with the other 16 countries. And again, access to data has already been said. It's very important to give transparency to all the grants and the money that is given to company as well, or in other activities. And also we work, as I said, with the private sector, giving instruments in order to improve policy, but also practical tools, monitoring and reporting on corruption. So everything is done in a coordinated way at local and global level, and we see the difference in the companies that really engage, not because it's nice to have, but because they really wanted to improve their transparency and accountability.
Thank you very much. I think we can have a second round of interventions. I will keep them under below 3 minutes each, so to respect our timetable. Mauro Battocchi, I am coming back to you. You described what MAXXI and the GSP in particular are doing in order to promote the culture among business and Italian business and companies, this anti-corruption culture. What are, in your opinion, the next steps to be done? And in particular, what are the main challenges that you think the public action against corruption, international corruption, has to tackle?
Thank you. Well, I really believe that competition and open markets are really conducive to transparency and to ethical, no corruption, zero corruption behavior. If you think about it, the more the market is closed, the more there's a tendency to oligopoly, to collusion, And the more you open up, the more then you have behaviors that are driven by competition, and transparency somehow is expected by the competitors. So what we do to try and internationalize the Italian business community and make it more and more present in the international markets, I think has a role in helping them come to terms with international standards, and then with the tight conditions of the world competition that really make it absolutely unacceptable to take the shortcuts, and instead they induce them to look for reputation and integrity. So this is like a structural background. I think what we are doing within our own realm is trying to design programs within, again, our responsibility, including the governmental agencies working with us, to include the integrity requirement as a precondition for accessing our incentives, and also as accompanying measures when we help them getting more and more international. If you allow me, Raffaele, I would like anyway also to add a brief comment on what Antonio was saying, which is absolutely very important. Italians are self-deprecating. We have self-irony in our DNA, but this can play against us because the data that Istat was mentioning, the Italian Statistical Agency was mentioning, the data that are based on where you actually witness to an episode of corruption are very different from the perception that comes out of a general question, is there corruption in your country? We have to be very careful, because if you really want to fight corruption, we have to pin it down, we have to identify the causes, we have to measure it, and thereby, like in every situation, the more data-driven we act, the better. And in this respect, I think there must be an effort, a collective effort, private and public partnership, to try and pin down really where and how corruption exists, and make sure that that corruption is extirpated, while at the same time we have to protect the reputation of our country, which attracts foreign investment, and foreign investors have to know what the real situation is. And I mentioned before, it's a country that has been fighting organized crime decisively for decades. It has an ANAC institution which is absolutely effective in its own action. And I think it also has a culture which does not accept corruption as the rule of the game. So in this respect, I think we have work to do also in the collection and analysis of data.
Thank you, Mauro. I fully agree with you. I've been appointed coordinator for judicial diplomacy in early December, and believe me, it's so surprising to notice that most of our public counterparts abroad, they fully recognize the quality and the intensity of our engagement in fight against corruption, maybe even more than some of Italian national observers. So it's maybe we should fight a little bit this kind of self-deprecation you were talking about. Antonio, many members of Confindustria, many associates of Confindustria, of course, can be described as being small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, large companies, they have all the tools that are needed in order to implement anti-corruption policies. Small and medium-sized enterprises, I mean, it's been said before, can be a little bit more challenged by this kind of policy adoption. What do you think Confindustria and, I mean, the associative sector can do in order to help smaller enterprises to progress in this field?
Thank you, Raffaele. Your question suggests me to share with us some consideration about the main instrument that in Italy we have to prevent corruption and illegal practice in business, that is the so-called 231 decree and the compliance program and the compliance program. In this respect, I would to underline that we support the idea that the adoption of effective anti-corruption policies and instruments in businesses is essential for the competition of them on international market, and so this is a decisive point. And in order to provide concrete support to companies, since 2002, Confindustria has developed key operational tools, such as the guidelines for the implementation of the so-called Modelli Organizzativi 231 compliance program. That in the context of a commitment to promote a culture of legality in businesses that passes through training initiative, raising awareness, but also in providing operational support for the adoption of compliance instrument. These programs are designed to prevent corporate crimes. In fact, the framework gives companies an active role in preventing profit-driven criminal activities. Nevertheless, as you remember, Raffaele, about SMEs, we have some problem because institutional efforts, in our point of view, must be even stronger. Has highlighted also by OECD Toolkit for raising awareness and preventing corruption in SMEs by 2022. Thank you, Mauro. In fact, to make SMEs more proactive, it's necessary to foster their growth and leverage of organizational innovation through a regulatory system that encourages them rather than relying on repressive measures. In this regard, the current system is too complex, in our point of view, for SMEs, which face three main challenges. The first is the excessive extension of triggering liability under 231 regulation. The second is a low level of procedural guarantees for the companies involved. And third is a lack of clear evaluation criteria in assessing whether a company's model, a compliance program, is adequate. So, for Confindustria, a reform of this framework is essential. A reform could be a real game changer in this area and should focus on three key areas: revising the scope of the regulation, of the 231 regulation, enhancing procedural safeguards to provide greater legal certainty, and third, restoring the original incentive-based approach by defining clear and precise rules on what is 231 model really compliant with law. I would like also to point out that last year we published as Confindustria an operational guide on whistleblowing to assist companies and in particular SMEs in implementing internal reporting channels as required by the new European legislation. But also in this field, we understand that there are a problem of application by SMEs, a problem of awareness and application of SMEs because the discipline is too complex. Additionally, and I conclude, due to an idea of continuous prevention and of collective action against illegal practices in business, since 2010 we have signed a protocol of legality with the Italian government, an initiative that extends anti-mafia controls typically provided to public tenders to contractual relationship between private entities that voluntarily decide to join the protocol. Also, in this case, the idea to join the protocol is not so large than we desire, and we have problem of application and implementation, in particular for SMEs. So a collective action is real necessary to simplify the system, the anti-corruption system, the preventing of illegal practice system for SMEs. Thank you.
Grazie Antonio. In less than 2 minutes, to Vanessa Hans. We were curious about the role of collective action when it comes specifically to SMEs. I mean, what are the positive effects of collective action for fight against corruption?
Sure. I could talk about this all day, but I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes. I think for SMEs, what's also really interesting is to look at implementation. I mean, a lot of the SMEs that we're working with often want to know exactly how it's going to work, but at the end of the day, it needs to have an impact. And I think a lot of the things we've heard here were about some of the more top-down approaches, and we're doing a lot of work also in trying to make sure that implementation works and is implementable. And so for SMEs, there are programs all over the world and different collective action initiatives. And by the way, if you're interested in collective action, please go visit the B20 Collective Action Hub. It's been curated by the Basel Institute over the last 10 years. We have over 300 different initiatives out there, so that can also give you ideas. But there are certain models that involve supply chains of larger companies. And so using collective action as a methodology to be able to level the playing field and bring those SMEs into the fold, so to speak, but also then to have a clear incentive for multinationals, because that reduces their own risk when engaging with these third parties. So there are a lot of innovation happening out there. There's also certain models of partnerships with also SMEs amongst themselves, so that peer learning and really learning from each other for implementation. And the last example I would share is we've talked a bit about culture, and so that's maybe the most difficult part to implement. We've been doing a little bit of work on that as well, looking at effectiveness of compliance programs, because we need to have the assurance that they work. And so I'd really invite you as well to look at the work of the Basel Institute and Norges Bank, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. We've published a couple of indicators that I think are good food for thoughts when it comes to the culture of a company and how that relates to corruption prevention measures.
Thanks a lot. And Daniela Bernacchi, what is, in your opinion, the specific performance of Italian small and medium-sized enterprises when it comes to corruption?
Well, as everyone has already said, there is a lack of resources and competencies, so this is the challenge. We are a privileged observatory. We have the data of our companies, so the one that we consider the best in class because I've already joined the ONGC initiatives. And the data says that in terms of statement of commitment, there is not big difference between big and small companies. So it's around 88%, 81%. But if we come to concrete actions, there is a huge gap, because only 47% of a small medium enterprise have appointed an individual responsible for anti-corruption, and only 39% have a clear formal structure to address the topic. And on top of that, 70% of a small medium enterprise belonging to a UNGC say that anti-corruption is not a priority. So there is still a lot to do. with them. We also join anti-corruption and collective actions. As Vanessa was saying, we work together with other chapters. We cover 13 countries involving civil society institutions, and to change the culture, because there is an issue of culture as well, not only of resources and instruments, but also of culture. And also we have this learning academy that is very good in terms of covering in a vertical way all the issues such as whistleblowing protection, reporting, tools for anti-corruption, and so on. At Italian level, because we must say we have an issue with the English language, and our academy is basically in English or Chinese or Arabic, which is not easy to get. We have programs with our chapter, and we have a working group on sustainable procurement, where we also face the issue of fair negotiation and integrity. And we have a group on sustainable supply chain, because as it was said, supply chain is the critical factor of success when we come to integrity. And big companies have a risk on supply chain if they don't follow the cultural progress and the procedures supply chain uses, and also risk interruption of production. So involving in a win-win way our supply chain in terms of sharing instruments, knowledge, and culture, and at the same time building a more resilient supply chain is very important for us as well. So we try to work at different level according to the level of the companies. 4 seconds left. We are available on the website. I will be here if you have more questions, and thank you.
Thanks a lot. I mean, we were extremely disciplined, so thank you very much for participating in this panel, and we immediately go to the second one. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I will start immediately. The second panel is devoted to a discussion about the impact that new technologies and the technological disruptions are having and will have more and more in the future on the issue of fight against corruption. The first intervention is from the OECD Secretariat, Madame France Chain, who is connected to us virtually. I don't know whether she's there.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the Zero Corruption Forum.
Good morning.
Well, we were saying that the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention, there is now 26. It was last year. You celebrated the 25th anniversary of the convention. Has been one of the most powerful multilateral tools to raise awareness against corruption. And nowadays, some 46 countries participate in the convention. What do you think will be the impact of new technologies on the efficacy and the effectiveness of the convention itself?
Thank you, Raffaele, and thank you to BIAC for allowing me to participate virtually. I'm very sorry I can't be in Rome and that you have to like twist your neck to speak to me up on the screen. But to answer your question, the convention, which is indeed 26 years old now, it was designed even from the start to address the evolving risks of foreign bribery in international business. It has also complementary instruments like a much more recent 2021 anti-bribery recommendation. And it's true that in today's digital era, there's emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, but also blockchain or digital payments that are reshaping how corruption occurs, how it can be prevented. And we're trying to work not just under the Anti-Bribery Convention, but also across the OECD to ensure that anti-corruption standards, anti-corruption policies, and good practices can be shared in this shifting landscape. So as far as I'm concerned, obviously, I'm most familiar with the OECD Working Group on Bribery, the 46 countries party to the convention that you mentioned. And so we do, as you know, evaluations. There's been one not that long ago of Italy, and we do look at the new risks posed by technological disruptions like digital currencies, anonymous transactions, etc., how they create new avenues, how they necessitate stronger enforcement mechanisms and regulatory updates. And of course, what we do in terms of our monitoring is we look at how each country explicitly considers how technological changes are affecting their investigation practices, but also the compliance practices by companies. And we know that some law enforcement are now expecting companies to have in place artificial intelligence tools to monitor their compliance. And this is to ensure that companies remain vigilant against emerging risks. And these sorts of tools are also being used by enforcers to make sure that they can address emerging risks. Now, to be a bit broader on the issue of new technologies and how we're looking at it, we are also working on policy recommendations on developing typologies. And maybe I'll just mention other work going on at the OECD. There's been work on cryptocurrencies and financial transparency, addressing risks associated with anonymous transactions, focusing on improving regulatory oversight. We've also looked at AI in government processes, notably to explore how artificial intelligence can enhance integrity in the public administration, from risk assessments in public spending, but also identifying corruption vulnerabilities in public procurement. And a third, perhaps, piece of work that might be of interest is work on e-governance and digital procurement, and the purpose of which, as you can imagine, is to promote transparency in government contracting by using digital tools that reduce human discretion, if you will, and that improve accountability. And so the idea, of course, behind all that is to leverage technology for enforcement, for fighting bribery at different levels. And so we're trying to look, as I mentioned, at big data analytics, at AI for detecting suspicious transactions, whether it's at the company level or for enforcement authorities. We're also looking at blockchain technologies to improve transparency, this more in the public sphere. And as it was mentioned in the previous panel, of course, AI also intervenes in the area of whistleblower protection and whistleblower protection platforms that can allow for secure, anonymous reporting, but also perhaps for sorting through whistleblower reports. And just to conclude, because I'm arriving at the end of my 3 minutes, just to say that we're, of course, working with other bodies on these issues, notably the FATF, the UNODC, the G20, and business organizations like BIAC. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks a lot. It's now time to invite to the floor Ms. Anita Schiffer, the second panelist today from Siemens Energy. Hello. E Roberto Fiore di LP Avvocati. You are the Group Compliance and Human Rights Officer at Siemens Energy, and you became quite recently also Vice Chair of the BIAC Anti-Corruption Committee. What's your perception of the impact that the advent of artificial intelligence will produce on the corruption issue?
Yeah, as Nicola said in the morning, I think it will be a game changer in also in anti-corruption work, but we are still early stage. So my perception at the moment is, at Siemens Energy, we have a fairly mature compliance system. We started from Siemens when we were carved out and spun off in 2020. We had a mature system, but of course it has to evolve, right? And currently at the moment, there are various initiatives ongoing in my department. We have started to put all our compliance tools and processes on one platform. That's a cloud-based one-stop shop solution, which already increases the data quality a lot. So it's much easier to work with that one tool. But that's, of course, still not AI. So what we are currently doing is we implement first solutions also in artificial intelligence for compliance. And I believe this is really something that there is no alternative to, because if the world around us becomes driven by AI, we also have to do this as a compliance department. However, we cannot do this alone. I mean, the whole thing, the panel is called a building block approach, right? So we cannot just as one department solve this. We can, for instance, of course, implement solutions like ChatGPT using for answering compliance questions, for compiling information, and to support data reviews and data collection. But for the real game changer, we need the whole company and a uniform strategy, because all the data has to be available in the system. We need departments like procurement, like finance, and of course IT to support this, and this is what is currently happening also. There's a big project going on where AI is becoming an integral part of all the company processes, and that's what my department is also embarking on. We have defined a project called Compliance of the Future, where we explicitly look proactively how we can embrace these trends, how we can implement AI in, for instance, internal investigations, for data reviews, for data collections, but also to proactively evaluate risks. In an ideal world, we would be able to predict the evolution of the risk landscape, and this is where we are heading, but currently still early stage.
Grazie Anita. L'avvocato Fiore.
Thank you, Roberto Fiore, LP Avvocati. Specializes in particular in crimes against public administration and is an expert in this sector. So from your point of view, the ubiquitous, let's say, spreading of AI, will it decrease the frequency of cases of corruption?
AI and new technologies, it's really a double-edged sword. We're on two opposite sides. On one side, we should celebrate, because it gives us so many great tools to fight corruption, to detect before, to prevent, and to fight. But on the other side, exactly, we should be concerned a little bit. Why? Because exactly for what you said, new illicit schemes, new ways to perform illicit activities. So what does it mean? We don't have to be so worried, but we have to take care of it. So we should shift from we should have a first digital mindset. That means that we should not think anymore analogical and then convert into digital, but starting natively digital thinking. That means that we do not have to think about the corruption scheme as before, committed through technologies. Instead, we have to think about new illicit schemes enabled by technologies. Examples, three very easy examples of new schemes powered by AI. Deep fake videos to facilitate translations. Fake documents that really can appear also better than the original one. And also algorithmic process decision-making that can influence or drive also the procurement decision. So that is why we have to take care, make some specific efforts. How can a law firm do to help companies to be compliant? First of all, using and integrating new technologies and tools into the legal strategies. Then on the other side, also using AI-driven tools to better perform during the corporate internal investigation. We have a lot of data. We have cross-references that using paper, and it will take too long time. We'll have the corruption in place, and we will understand what happened weeks after. Instead, with these new tools, we'll have also early warnings, the so-called red flags that can help to prevent. Then, I think the most important thing is to help companies to use AI to leverage the monitoring. That means that we have to push on the really, according to my opinion, the real game changer, the continuous monitoring. AI and new technologies can really improve and put in place effective and efficient continuous monitoring. And last consideration, this shift from prevention, of compliance to real prevention, it also helps the culture because it's a deterrent. The mere awareness that there is a continuous monitoring implemented with so strong new technologies act also as a deterrent to perform illicit schemes.
Thanks a lot. Now I will start the second round of questions with Franz Chain. If she's still with us, I can see her.
He is.
Okay. So just to give us a flavor of the Global Anti-Corruption and Integrity Forum that is scheduled to take place in late March. It will be quite an important and very well communicated, I will say, event. But if you could give us a little bit of anticipation about this event.
With pleasure, and I know I'll see some of you there as well. It's taking place between the 25th and 28th of March. And this year we're quite excited because we're going to be talking about emerging technology, but also other types of innovations to fight corruption and bribery. But focusing on today's discussion and AI, data analytics, etc. We'll be looking at how these tools are transforming enforcement, compliance, and transparency efforts. And so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what to expect in terms of these sessions. We'll have notably a key session focusing on how AI and digital tools are revolutionizing the way we detect, investigate, and prevent corruption, notably procurement fraud, and how basically the three stakeholders are using it. I talked about the law enforcement, I talked about compliance, but we'll also look about how civil society and notably investigative media use data to search through data, to share data, to use it to prevent and detect corruption. We'll also have a major discussion on bridging the data gap. You talked a little bit earlier in the previous panel about SMEs. Now that's another area where the data gap is, of course, likely to happen in terms of new technologies. But it's not just in terms of big or small companies. We're noticing a data gap growing among law enforcement as well. So we'll try and discuss how AI, how data analytics can help, can facilitate data sharing frameworks, can foster transparency. What else? For companies, there's going to be an important session that's going to be specifically dedicated to how AI is being integrated into anti-corruption compliance systems. So we'll hear a little bit like this morning how companies are adapting to the shift and but also addressing challenges like bias. We didn't really talk about that this morning, but there are obviously inherent risks. So data confidentiality is another one, notably in Europe with the GDPR. And maybe just going slightly abroad the AI issue to mention areas that might be of interest to maybe just briefly to mention two last topics, challenges to whistleblower protection, again, an issue that was raised not only in terms of protections, which are, of course, the key important issue, but also because now there's challenges that are emerging about how to make these mechanisms truly effective. So it's about also following up on the reports that are going to happen, how to sort through them, notably in the area of economic crime and corruption. And then, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, we'll have, of course, a lot of knowledge partner sessions, including one organized by business at the OECD on new ways to combat corruption. So really, we're hoping for this forum to be a great opportunity to exchange ideas, explore solutions, also talk about challenges. And we really hope to see many of you there. Registrations are still open for both in-person and virtual participation.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, and good luck for this very important event.
Thank you.
Again, to Anita, in your everyday, day-by-day activity, what we know artificial intelligence and new technologies are quite recent, but still, you must have already have worked on a set of main hurdles and obstacles that maybe can interfere with the uptake of such new technologies. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, in fact, there are various hurdles, of course. I mean, one is, I think, the fear around the topic, that people still are scared that it is something bad or too risky or might even take their jobs away in the end. And I think this is something we have to overcome, because I think it's really without alternative that we embrace this, and the world is going to turn more digital, and we have to proactively embrace this trend. And that's why I have in my department also launched this project, and we have a project called Crystal Ball, which is really trying to predict how exactly our work will look like in 10, 20 years from now to overcome that fear. And then, of course, there are more practical hurdles, like technological hurdles. It's still, sometimes we struggle with the quality of the results we get. So I think we still need to improve things. Then also, of course, AI has to be fed with a non-biased content. It has to use algorithms which give us the right results, and it has to be trained the right way. And then, of course, companies need legal certainty. So when you do something really fresh and new, this is good and great, but of course, sometimes authorities, when you have a proceeding and you have to show what you have done, maybe they wanted the traditional ways, right? So we have to see what really is good enough, or what we can show how we have applied our system supported by AI. So on various fronts, I think there are obstacles, but nothing that cannot be overcome. And in the end, I think it's important to understand that something that will improve the quality of our work tremendously. It will empower risk-based decision-making and informed decision-making, but it will never take away the real work of anti-corruption and of a compliance officer, which is supporting the management and exercising judgment and using the experience in our large infrastructure projects. It's not only about understanding data, but it is also about making a call in the end, sometimes based on a on a risk landscape which you find. And I think this is the ultimate benefit, that it provides us with the data and the information we need to then have a qualified and informed discussion in the end.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And finally, we are going very fast to the conclusion of this second panel. Roberto Fiore, you are also an expert of whistleblowing, and do you think the impact on whistleblowing of artificial intelligence will be significant? I mean, what's your idea about this?
It will be, and I would love to start with two main words of this panel, trust and transparency. These are the same words that are the pillars of an efficient and trustful whistleblowing system. So we really can have a positive impact with AI and all the new technologies tools to enhance and foster the whistleblowing system. For example, for the first point, having an blockchain or AI-driven anonymization tool can really can feel the whistleblower safer about their position, it will enhance the idea of a speak-up culture and to perform reports and whistleblowing. On the other side, as said before, having an investigation after the whistleblowing powered by AI give to the results much more transparency, traceability, and credibility. So both of them can really improve the whistleblowing system. But on the other side, we always have, the double face of the coin. On the other side, we do not have to over-rely on the AI because it's still so powerful and unknown technology, at least to the average people, so that we all have some worries about our privacy. We do not really know where the data are processed. We are worried about the misuse of automatic decision that can be led by AI. And last but not least, the biases we were talking about in the risk assessment and evaluation. So that means that, according to my opinion, the whistleblowing system has always to be led by human. So starting from the evaluation of the results, from the strategy of the investigation, evaluation of the results, and especially the final decision, as always in the hand of the human being. But we also can think about another improvement of using AI technologies into the whistleblowing activities, and it's the integrate the results of the investigation with the real-time analysis. We, as I said before, the continuous monitoring is a very decisive tool that can improve the fight against corruption. If we can have also the real-time results of the investigation, we can anticipate the emergence of red flags. And so we can also prevent corruption. Usually the fight against corruption is an ex post facto. It's about also the whistleblowing sometimes or very often happens after the fact. So having the tools that can prevent and predict the patterns of illicit schemes can be really, really powerful. So we should work on two sides, on two levels. The very high level, it helps credibility and trust and create a speak-up culture. Then on the lower side, the everyday activity can really be the everyday monitoring, and it will help definitely all the companies.
Thanks a lot. It looks a little bit like Minority Report, which is interesting, but it's still a bit new. I mean, at least for us. So thanks a lot to participants of the second panel. Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Roberto. And we go straight to the last part of the first session of today's works. I will call to the floor Nicoletta Bombardiere, who is Director General for Global Issues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Italy, to conclude the first part of today's work. Nicoletta, you.
Thank you very much. We come to the end of the three panels of the first session. I would now like to continue in Italian to share with you some final remarks. Dai tre panel abbiamo.
So the panels allowed us to take stock of a lot of suggestions and ideas that indicate strong trends and convergence. So in essence, this collective exercise reinforces us being convinced that in the constructive dialogue between institutions and the private sector and the civil society, well, here we can, of course, develop a culture of the rule of law that then becomes part and parcel of the decision-making processes and monitoring processes of the various activities. So one is leadership and integrity and the value of legal diplomacy, which is on the one side sort of helping in the construction of an ecosystem of transparent governance based, of course, on strict rules and also on collaboration between the public and private sector in a synergic way. So we can talk about the Italian approach, which has the ability of involving more actors and stakeholders. So it's a multi-stakeholder and multi-shareholder approach. And we can talk about the Italian approach, which is quite ambitious, especially in wishing to put together institutions, enterprises, and civil society. The interinstitutional coordination working group to counter corruption is an example, an innovative example of this approach. And we need to develop standards of integrity which can be enforced globally. The second topic is the link between anti-corruption and economic growth. We heard it in a lot of contributions made. So the reference to the terrible consequences of corruption on the dynamics for growth and the wealth that is, let's say, taken away, and how investments are discouraged and how the quality of competition is decreased. So competition and so corruption undermines the foundations of a fair development. And then we heard a lot of speakers mentioning the attitude of institutions and also our companies. Well, it's possible there to generate a culture of investment in transparency, and this leads to a competitive advantage. Enterprises that work with high integrity standards have a better access to international markets and reduce the risks linked to, for instance, reputational issues. And economic diplomacy and legal diplomacy have to go hand in hand and work in synergy and work together to promote the rule of law as a distinguishing trait of our business system and how we project it abroad as well. So corruption represents, of course, a problem involving ethics, but not just ethics. It's a concrete hurdle to growth and innovation. The third topic is innovation as an ally to transparency. So digitalization, adoption of innovative tools, well, these are key factors to make the struggle against corruption more effective. So we also met Rita, the first AI colleague, and I would like to see other Ritas in public administration as well. And the important reference to the way in which technology is used and digital technology is used in a way that has to be, let's say, an ally, the human factor, which is not replacing humans, but which acts as a partner and as an ally. So in essence, we do share the idea that Italy should not be on a defensive side when it comes to anti-corruption. And also, I would like to refer to the suggestion by Confindustria to work more and better on the corruption perception indices. And this is a commitment that Italy is carrying out at the international level. And Italy is not in a defensive position because our country has acknowledged our leadership and at an international level in the main fora where anti-corruption is tackled. We've become a point of reference also as in terms of definition of standards and rules, so from the G7 or G20, OECD and United Nations. And of course, we don't have to stop here because the challenge is to transform this commitment in an engine of growth for our economic system, and where integrity and cultural integrity are considered not as a cost, but as an advantage, as a competitive advantage. Corruption is not an unavoidable phenomenon. It's an issue that we need to face with vision and collaboration. And the activity we are carrying out today is one of the several steps along the pathway. And the zero corruption approach is lived as a moral pathway, a concrete action, and also a guideline for foreign policy when it comes to Italy. So with these considerations, we move on to the second session, that is to say, the Interinstitutional Coordination Group, which is an example of this approach, which we have also described with this activities. So we're going to have a video message, the Minister of Justice, Carlo Nordio. So thank you so much. And let's have a look at the video.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning. I'm honored for this invitation, and unfortunately I could not join you personally because there's a Council of Ministers this morning, and because in the afternoon I have to leave for a mission abroad. Nonetheless, my contribution intends to underline the importance of this meeting and the importance of activities relating to anti-corruption. As a magistrate, I've long dealt with corruption at a national level. So from the manipulated times in 1993, 95, up to 2005. Corruption at a national level was and still is one of the negative aspects that represent a couple of negative points in terms of GDP, and most of all endanger somehow our competitiveness. But then we've tried over the time, also with the previous governments, we tried to react through a number of regulations. But today we have also international corruption, because globalization unescapably, and we knew that, will lead to let's say, a situation of international corruption, and this is part and parcel of any form of trade, financial transaction, and contract. So corruption has always existed, and it's enough to read also Cicero, and it will certainly exist in the future as well. So our task is to reduce this phenomenon and to avoid it overwhelms main principles of free competition and a level of investment in our country. The idea of having a meeting of the coordination table is in line with the multi-stakeholder approach through an effective and concrete dialogue between public and private partners. I find it extremely interesting to mention business integrity, where for the first time we've tackled the important novelty of the so-called Law 231. Law 231, as you know, is the law at the basis of administrative responsibility of legal persons. That is to say, it's an administrative responsibility because we all agree that it's a criminal, let's say, liability, and if assessed through the criminal proceedings by the courts, there can be sanctions that can be also challenged between the judges in the second and third level of judgment. Hence, in order to let's say, promote this principle, we have this administrative responsibility and liability, which is also somehow more important than the criminal one, because sanctions are very strict, and they can also reach the ban of the activity by the given company. So Law 231, which dates back to 20 years ago, and which had a low level of enforcement so far, well, now it is going to be a fundamental law in this framework as well. And you probably remember that it aims at impacting companies and individuals that perpetrate an offense. So, especially, well, if we want to, for instance, identify companies that have derived an advantage from corruption, well, this is a good deterrent because the criminal sanction today has lost its efficacy, its concrete efficacy, because you know well that someone is talking about amnesty to solve the problems of overcrowding in prisons. Here there are no discounts. And no amnesties intervene because if the administrative liability is identified, a company may go bankruptcy. So I sum up this concept, which is probably not clear to everybody. That is to say, when an offense is perpetrated in the best interest of a company, besides criminal responsibility and personal liability of those that perpetrated the offense, there's also the administrative liability of the company with several sanctions and fines imposed. So this is an important step forward that falls within an extremely effective strategy. And it was also acknowledged on the occasion of the meeting in Atlanta, and where Italy is always going to be at the forefront. So thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful day. Thank you. Good morning. Let's start this session of the Anti-Corruption Coordination Table. And I would like to invite Sergio Valentini, member of the Board of Transparency International, Giovanni Colombo, in charge of business integrity, Davide Bergami, advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Economic and Financial Affairs, Giorgio Matalino, chair of ITRA, and Sam Fabrizi, Minister Plenipotentiary, coordinator for the European Union System Partnership Activities and coordinator for the Central European Initiative. So the interinstitutional table so all of the reports that show Italy as subject that has been assessed by the OECD, well, that the chance to underline that that the Italian model can be replicated abroad. So this coordination mechanism has to be analyzed through a multi-stakeholder approach. We have public and private stakeholders that exchange views so that the voice of the country is a single one, and the bar of our, let's say, legal system, while the bar is continuously raised. And I'd like to ask Davide Bergami, advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'll try to describe, let's say, all that was said among three main lines. I will start, as I said before, start from the OECD, and then I'll mention some events and also the recent G7 that ended a couple of months ago. So please allow me to read, because we tried to describe with some names and surnames and situations that's hidden. So as the Minister of Foreign Affairs mentioned in his message, and that was reiterated during the debate, a fundamental activity is the promotion and protection of competition, and which is not just relating to mere market logics, but also it has contributed to a better justice and social equity. So we've got continuous confirmations of a convergence which is fruitful and productive of the legal diplomacy and we want to put together the concept of diplomacy with all of the other aspects, and by having ad hoc programs, which need to be cross-sectional one. So there are several forms of, let's say, expression of this commitment, and some of them are particularly important when it comes to the implementation of these actions. So I start on the first pillar. Starting from the OECD report 2022, it's important to recall the recognition of a good Italian practice, as Giovanni Tartaglia said, and I make some examples. One is that of trying to have the raising awareness activities as the Italian Business Integrity Forum, and we've organized them according to different days or according to the participation in a series of workshops that were carried out all over the world. And this is very important to underline this aspect that was even before COVID. And these activities were carried out with the Italian Transparency Chapter. So the Italian companies operating abroad, so the subsidiaries of our companies, had the chance to present their strategies to prevent and counter illegal behaviors and corruption, which show the commitment in favor of integrity and transparency. Minister Nordio recalled the double value. So on the one side, there's the responsibility of those that operate, and on the other side, and this is very important and relevant. And these clarifications were underlined on the occasion of a number of workshops, for example, in Oslo, Paris, OECD, São Paulo, Washington, London, Berlin, and starting from, well, the pre-COVID phase, so 2017, 2020, 2021. So today we have an awareness and a clear decision to go ahead with this initiative, and of course, which were appreciated in public and private areas. So this builds up the sharing of best practices, and companies like Luxottica, Team, Enel, Terna, Reina, Leonardo, Snam, they've all contributed and participated in these initiatives. So these are very relevant. And also, a distinguishing trait of good practices is they would simulate a continuous dialogue between companies, dynamics in the territory, and markets, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, by conjugating the economic and ethical objectives, commercial performance with the social one to strengthen the positive reputational idea. And as it was mentioned this morning, this is an important opportunity for all of us, because we're aware that this has a cost, but we also have to mention that this is not a cost. Actually, this is an investment. I mean, there's a difference between mentioning a cost and mentioning an investment, because the investment allows to have something that is going to be, of course, depreciated all the time. So it's an asset, and it's not a cost to core. So there's the progressive understanding of being exposed to the reputational situation both in Italy and in international markets. And at the moment, out of 2,000 billion GDP, we are talking about exports of 650 billion. So this is not a cost, but this is an investment, because when in a country you have nearly 40% of GDP done abroad, then you understand that what we are doing is definitely meaningful. Investing to improve one's way of doing business and having a culture of rule of law and investing according to the standards in terms of sustainability, well, this must be done. And in this way, it's possible to qualify the entrepreneurial activity, and the companies gain a high level of trust. And this goes towards the goal 16 of the UN. Then, of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs as the manager of the network, and also another topic of SMEs. We are aware that the smaller, the higher the level of difficulty. But if you are small and you want to compete in international markets, then you need to have some strategic levers, and that is why we are here to provide support both at the OECD and Ministry of Foreign Affairs level. Then G20. There were important meetings like WG, and it's an important table that continues to work. And also the G7. As the G7, we had specific commitments adopted, and also in the light of the new situation, we'll see how things will evolve. But of course, we go ahead with our strategic, let's say, dialogue. And when it comes to last year's G7, the promotion of anti-corruption working groups has been promoted, and this falls within the experience gained within the G20, aimed at strengthening cooperation between the main economies. And one of the main results of this exercise was the adoption of a document on the capacity building relating to anti-corruption, which formalizes a methodology developed by Italy and based on 4 pillars for the development of skills. That is, capacity, institutional building, and consensus building. And I stop here, if that's fine for you, Giovanni. Thank you. Thank you, Davide. Thank you for this overview, and it's important to reiterate that our role in multinational fora has not stopped with the end of our presidency and with the handover of the G7, but rather will continue to work on the suggestions and values to contribute to the global agenda according to the, let's say, main lines of our legal systems. And one of the characteristics of our action is represented by the a concrete dialogue between public, private, and civil society stakeholders. And this morning we had a clear indication of what a dialogue means, which is not just communicating things, but actually you have to agree upon pathways and also to have a convergence between one's agenda. And we, as Italians, were the protagonists of a revision of the language at an international level, and we've included in a document, as Mr. Begami said, the word multi-shareholder. So we go beyond the multi-stakeholder definition. So we have partners, so we don't have counterparties, and we have contributions by representatives of Transparency International. So the floor to Sergio Valentini and Giovanni Colombo, please. Good morning. There's an important initiative that turns 10 years, which is the Business Integrity Forum, the initiative by Transparency Italy for the private sector, and it includes the main companies in the country, over 20 companies, and in 2025 we'll hopefully achieve 25 companies. And in the last few years, we've been committed in moving ahead by involving small and medium enterprises with special initiatives like the establishment of a small kit for SMEs, but also dialogue with the various sectors of sustainability. So with specific attention paid to the new CSRB and CSRDDD, and also ethics and collaboration, and also the passage from a compliance, which is 231, which is more defensive, to the business integrity. That is to say, the passage from a defensive reaction towards a proactive action that focuses on the values of a company. And in this framework, we've been at ease and we've, of course, collected a lot of best practices. And then we've started this collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs because the Italian Business Integrity Day, where we have in common the business integrity, so an evolution of compliance towards this new broader prospect where we rely on ethics and values. So this collaboration has been a spin-off of the BIF, but in particular, it allowed us, as you may see in this slide, and as said before, even before COVID, and we actually had to stop in the period of COVID, but we want to have a new start because last year we've restarted our dialogue, and this year we believe we can arrange the 2025 edition of the BIF and Business Integrity Day. It's a way to show how some important Italian companies can bring excellence in the form of culture and instruments in the territories in which they operate, in synergy with the legal diplomacy that we have in Italy with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which coordinates thanks to the network of embassies, and also the representatives of the civil society. And also, I would like to add one thing in particular, because we defined this collaboration that was well defined as a multi-shareholder approach. And I think you know the kintsugi art, which is the Japanese art based on which you put together the pieces of a broken vase. And nothing was broken this time, but we have to highlight how the final result is sometimes better than the original. But everyone can be a part of the pieces, but also the liquid gold that is used to, let's say, glue the pieces of base, which allows to get the best out of the different situations and also have this model abroad as well.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti.
Thank you.
In English, but the translation is going to be great. Credo che nessuno metta in discussione.
Soft power, when it comes to culture, is something internationally acknowledged. Everyone acknowledges that Italy ranks first internationally in the history of culture in terms of quantity and quality and longevity of its cultural ability. So we're talking about soft power of culture of rule of law. That's it, which sees us close, going towards the same direction between companies and institutions and NGOs in a moment which is particularly difficult, in which the suspension of the Corruption Act declares the legitimation, let's say, of unfair competition, which does not happen in Europe and has not happened in Europe for decades. So let's start from a first statement. It's a moment in which there's a lot of there's a variety of behaviors. There's the EU directive being debated, and there are extraordinary results obtained by the Italian system because, of course, we have enterprises and citizens and institutions, and this is the true Italian system. And also the appointment of Bruno at the European Anti-Money Laundering Authority. And also, as Mr. Bouzia said, is the coordination of the European Anti-Corruption Authority. And we're the bad ones. So it's a dirty job for someone else to do it. As Mr. Bzia said, if the thermometer says you have the fever, you can be upset with the thermometer, you can try and cure your fever. So when we say that we acknowledge the Italian institutions' commitment, which is innovative and which is a continuous one, and we acknowledge this fact, just to be clear. So corruption also resides in NGOs. So the Qatar Gate, so 2 NGOs involved. Because corruption is of people within organizations, irrespective of whether they're public, private, or from the third sector. And model of commitment in Italy is a best practice. And in fact, Italy is recognized internationally as an innovator because Italy historically has always had important issues. And the programs are called Programmi Falcone, Borsellino, e Levatino. But it's the ability to react that matters and not the severity of the phenomenon. So if you stand up several times, those that stand up several times are stronger than those that never fell. And the International Business Integrity Forum, well, this is an innovation internationally. And to acknowledge that the ministry was an innovator in involving in the anti-corruption table also stakeholders are not public, which are not private, which is not to be taken for granted. And the first multi-stakeholder standard is the ISO 26000, approved and written in the year 2000 on the corporate responsibility. And here we have UNI. Here, there was a huge struggle between the national delegations where cohesion was achieved between all the stakeholders at European level, independently from their origin. A word on resources. We have resources if we are able to work in an innovative way. And I make an example. Today, Transparency International Italy is managing a platform, which is a whistleblowers.it, which has 5,700 public organizations, Italian public organizations, joining it and using it free of charge. And Transparency International Italy is not a rich NGO. You can have a look at our accounts online, but we have 4 ministries, 5 regions, plus the autonomous region. And we have the municipality of Milan, Rome, Palermo, Catania, Bologna, Florence. We have chambers of commerce and also Autostrade, which is in the room today. So if you want to work well, you do not necessarily need to spend money or have the money. You have to do your job seriously. And it's quite revolutionary to provide a platform of this kind to public authorities and to do that free of charge. But this is the only way to show the seriousness of the work carried out. And I'd like to close with an invitation to be brave at the ministry, because it's not going to be easy to defend these positions within the G7. And the result obtained has been extraordinary. So including in the final declaration for the first time, the high-level principle on corruption in the meeting of the G7 leaders, well, this is unprecedented, and it happened in Venezia, and no other country which coordinated G7 ever requested it and never did it. And now the best is yet to come. So thank you for the trust and good luck. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Colombo and Mr. Valentini. Thank you. And also thanks to Vice Minister Cirielli, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we have the last 2 contributions, one by the chairman of an association that embodies the multi-shoulder method in its DNA, which is ITRA. the Italian Association for Transparency and Anti-Corruption, which gathers public employees, professionals, and businessmen and businesswomen that live experiences linked to the role as persons in charge of preventing corruption according to the new regulation in force. So the floor to Mr. Giorgio Martellino. Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me. And I wish to thank, of course, Mr. Tattaglia and all of participants. So it is an honor to be part of this interministerial table that, as we said, has represented, of course, the long-term vision of the ministry, and also involving associations representing the civil society. So from this point of view, I'd like to spend a couple of words by thanking and also witnessing what an association is and what an association can bring to the table. So what is the witnessing? Well, first of all, we have a clear situation, which is the following. As from Decree 231, we've seen there was a privatization of the risk analysis in the compliance systems in Italy, because before then, if you remember, all of the regulations were based on the risk analysis that was carried out by the regulator or the lawmaker. So with the 231, for the first time, companies were given the task and the burden to analyze the risk, and in particular we are talking about anti-corruption, but of course 231 also includes several let's say offenses. But what I wanted to say is that, in essence, from the approach point of view, the situation has changed completely by the policymaker, because from the operational point of view, if we don't involve the civil society and the associations like ITRA, but many other ones as well, of course, are relevant. It's important to involve civil society and the professionals that are part of it, because then they are the women and the men that implement regulations in the company. And preventing corruption without involving the stakeholders that have to work on it on a daily basis is short-sighted, in my opinion. And all of the tables in which there's involvement of the civil society have to be more than welcome. So what did we do? Well, this year we're going to turn 10. And what did we do in the last 10 years? We've established an association with the main purpose of considering the culture. So Italy is a country in which culture has an important value, and what we've tried to do is to bring through free of charge events in terms of training and dissemination. We've tried to have the culture of prevention of corruption in Italy in a particular historical moment. So 10 years ago was after Law 190. So in a particular moment in which Italy was also, let's say, called to implement and increase the level of prevention of corruption. So we provided information, training, networks, because it's fundamental to exchange best practices among operators. And also, members are the compliance officers or the anti-corruption officers of public and private authorities. So here we can talk about public-private partnership, because if we have separate spheres, public and private, they don't talk to one another. And if you don't have a partnership that deals with anti-corruption, you risk to be isolated. So we've tried to allow a debate between these two different units. So we are exchanging best practices, and best practices can be positively contaminated and in private sector and vice versa. So we've got a network with institutions. So we are the interlocutors of institutions as ANAC, and we have protocols in place and MOUs in place with them just explain that there are, for instance, well, we talk about soft law, but the soft law, if the soft law is not implemented correctly, and if you don't listen to the parties that have to implement it, and as we said before, of course, I work in a company and I know that compliance is considered in some cases as an investment, as it should be considered, but in other cases, in other realities, it's considered as a cost. And in Italy, most of companies are small and medium enterprises and not large companies. So having this culture also at a low level within the supply chain is not easy. And those that are lucky enough to develop compliance systems, well, this has become an obligation, a moral obligation to try and have culture of prevention and corruption. So now this is a fil rouge of all of the regulations that someone would like to maybe stop, but it's not going to be the case. So this is the trend, and we see it in terms of CSRD or cybersecurity or in terms of artificial intelligence. So if you don't have a country system where large companies positively contaminate the related activities, well, then there will be issues. So there must be a contamination as we as an association, we foster this dialogue between large companies and small enterprises, and we also provide support in advocacy, and which we believe it is fundamental. And I close with an example that is I participated in a number of visits abroad and organized within the BIF. And in the framework of this project by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where the Italian excellence was brought outside and abroad, not just from a technical point of view, but also from the point of view of ethics. So this type of approach of a country system, this is something we definitely need to put in place, because we're seen as a company that there are positive feedbacks. Because when you, for instance, express internationally and define your best practices relating to ethics, well, this allows a company to get a competitive advantage. So we have to use this lever of anti-corruption and compliance and culture, but we have to use it as a competitive advantage, which, for instance, in the US, in this moment, this is not done, and it's considered as the opposite, because President Trump has suspended the enforcement of this provision by saying that the cost of the implementation of this regulation is a burden for the US companies. So we have to reason, as we did so far, and we have to do that, because we believe that is the correct way to avoid allowing other companies and competitors to exercise unfair competition. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martellini. And now, before giving the floor to the last speaker, I'd like to recall that our legal diplomacy follows two lines. One is regulatory harmonization. And when it comes to regulatory harmonization, of course, it's useful to recall that Legislative Decree 231 of 2001, mentioned by the Minister of Justice as a term of reference for the rule of law in business activities, our Legislative Decree 231 is one of the laws that have been copied abroad. So this is known by the experts only, but there are cases in which some legal systems have taken our law and have copied it in their own language and have implemented it and enforced it fully, and the law is fully enforced. So this means that our companies have a legal environment which is favorable in several countries all over the world. The other line of legal diplomacy is the capacity building and technical support when it comes to justice and security and safety. So this is involving the request for support in terms of training and modernization of legal frameworks. And this is increasingly happening all over the world in terms of fight against corruption, mafia, and money laundering. So this is a reason for pride for us, because we may recall that one of the first persons working this way was Giovanni Falcone with the United Nations, because Giovanni Falcone, since being the father of the Palermo Convention, used to have training courses for magistrates from other countries in terms of countering measures to fight against corruption. And now Sam Fabrizi, who is the Minister Plenipotentiary and coordinator for the European Union System Partnership Activities and coordinator for the Central European Initiative. So the minister mentioned, Minister Tajani mentioned that there's going to be a new edition of the Falcone and Borsellino program devoted to Central Europe, and this is going to be within the INCE process, which is one of the terms of reference for, let's say, Minister Fabrizi. Thank you so much, and I'll be short since I'm the last speaker, and also because the Vice Minister is here already. So INCE is a small organization, a glorious one, established in 1989. And it aims at putting together and gathering countries east of Rome, let's say.
Fino alla lontana Moldova. Nel corso
So over the years, the mandate of INCE has always been that of supporting regional dialogue and transforming it as a support to European integration. So I think this was an important intuition. And in fact, out of the 16 member countries that are part of INCE, the vast majority of them have become EU member states. And those that are not, well, they are countries that include also Moldova and Ukraine. But INCE, in its geographical position, is unique. It's a unique organization with this corridor from Trieste to Chisinau, collecting a shared set of interests by different countries. And some of these countries are already part of the EU, and other countries that still have to cover some items. But of course, there's the full recognition of the main aspects of the acquis communautaire, especially when it comes to the rule of law. And the rule of law is a fundamental aspect when it comes to the Copenhagen criteria for the accession of these countries, and specific activities carried out when it comes to the enlargement. And within the rule of law, anti-corruption is a fundamental aspect, and it's recognized as a fundamental one by us and within the EU. And this is a work in progress, and also a very long activity. So INCE, I think, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, is considered as a platform which is very useful and ideal. It allows us to project through the membership and the tools of INCE. It allows to show the items relating to the fight against corruption. So INCE has a multidimensional dimension, and this is important to recall. If we talk about multi-stakeholder, multi-dimension, etc. So it's a parliamentary dimension, and also with the stakeholders from different areas of origin, and we're glad. We're glad because we've started this activity, and also, well, this was announced by the minister this morning. It's an activity that we've started yesterday with Mr. Langella, and yesterday we were in Belgrade, and we started to deal with the activity on anti-corruption, and it's been included in the agenda of INCE. So hopefully, through INCE and its projection in the Western Balkans, hopefully we can work to deal with anti-corruption as described in the capacity building document. And hopefully this can become a tool through which we may work towards the same direction by using methodologies, the same methodologies as those adopted by the EU, so that the rule of law and anti-corruption become part and parcel of the legal and economic and social culture of these countries. I stop here, and I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. So, now, closing remarks, and I would like to invite Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Honorable Edmondo Cirielli. And he has already led the coordination table in the last few years, and is a supporter of our activities, and I grasp this opportunity to thank him for his support. Thank you. And thank you so much. And I wish to thank Mr. Natalia Porcini for insisting to having me in presence. Although the contribution by the minister has certainly provided a clear message by the Minister of Foreign Affairs as a support to this initiative, but also to the legal diplomacy, which is a positive thing for Italy. And Italy is truly happy to be a leading country, especially because, especially when we talk about the spreading of good practices, and this is something we have achieved in several years, and not just from the legislative point of view. And in fact, we have an extremely advanced and developed legislation when it comes to the countering of activities from the organized crime, but we have police forces that our police forces are very known all over the world, and they are requested, and the contribution is requested all over the world. So we should not forget that our judiciary system has huge examples, of course, in heroes whose names are part of important programs which characterize our international action. Well, a lot of magistrates that, of course, are now providing advice or extending good practices, provide training, and sometimes representing also the ability to establish institutions all over the world. And it's enough to think about what we've done in the Western Balkans and what we did and continue to do in some partner countries in Eastern Europe and in neighboring countries, an activity we're very proud of, and for which we thank the several, let's say, representatives that carry out this activity. So this coordination table, I'm sure, has provided a further contribution, and I wish to thank all of the participants, and please allow me to mention the foreign speakers and foreign guests that are here today, and also the Italian executives that represent us internationally. So clearly enough, the issue of corruption is a hot topic, which relates on the one side to an aspect of human beings, which can, on the one side, which can be a positive one, that is, say, the negative dilation of the ability of human beings to be empathic and to have relations with friends and people they know, and the limit of what becomes an abuse of power and an attitude that cannot be accepted. So on the one side, the ability by the state to be democratic, and also the ability of the free market not to have negative impacts, which is the essence of what is perceived as something that cannot be accepted by individuals. When you have, let's say, discrimination, this is something that makes us, let's say, be upset. And on the other side, we have to be careful not to instrumentalize and mainly when it comes to these aspects, and to use these activities for purposes other than the ones I mentioned briefly. Very often Italy is considered as one of the most corrupted countries in the world, which is the denial of what I've just said. Because if we export high executives and magistrates and extraordinary regulations, it's quite strange that we are among the most corrupted countries. But probably as Italians, we have a clear awareness when it comes to the abuses, and maybe we are more reactive in reporting things that are not good. And sometimes there are, let's say, situations. Well, Italy is not perfect. We know that, and we always have to improve. We have to continue to improve, and we have to try and allow things to be for the best. And of course, all of the people that carry out this activities, from members of parliament and staff, etc., it's important that everyone works well. So the world is changing. We said it already, and we have to acknowledge this fact, and we have to defend the conquests that we've carried out, and being aware that, of course, the democratic governance by nature is one that ensures the highest level of transparency, especially if you consider what's behind corruption, because Anglo-Saxon countries that have always been considered as an example of virtue, well, those countries we know well that actually have the idea of legalized support, let's say, which is done on the basis of relationships. But then if the person is good, then that person evolves. But in our country, of course, if you promote, let's say, someone of course, you risk to, let's say, have a trial against you. So this means that we probably have more offenses in terms of corruption, maybe. And I'm saying this not because I want to, let's say, relieve Italy. And I just want to say that we need to be practical, which doesn't mean we have to be cynical. It means that we have to look at facts and try and achieve the best possible goals, which doesn't mean we don't have to be ambitious. It means that we have to avoid, let's say, and I know for sure that we have to try and be fanatic. I mean, we have to be what we consider as our main way. That is to say, we have to push and consider the responsibilities that we have towards the others, because a fanatic approach, an ideological approach to problems leads us to disaster. A practical vision allows us to look not with a cynical approach, but with a smart approach to the common good, which is always a halfway, and which is very often the best option. So the government expects a lot from people that work in this sector, and it's an extraordinarily difficult moment at an international level. But of course, needless to, let's say, be negative. And what we have to do now is to act in a concrete way and try and do the best for the generations to come, without forgetting the present, of course, which is important for us. So we need to be responsible. And I'm convinced that the international fora, the public ones, and also the collaboration with the private world that needs public action supporting, of course, free trade and supporting and countering, unfair competition. The West that has to keep a strong commitment on the rule of law and the law and values. Well, it's not possible to think that elsewhere, where you have different level of governance, when they may think they can teach us everything in terms of public ethics, just because they are using maybe a strong approach when it comes to episodes of corruption or alleged episodes of corruption. So I stop here. I've tried to provide my contribution, maybe different from the technical one that you have provided, but I guess you didn't want me to reiterate what you've said in the rest of the morning. So thank you so much.